What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk to you about SoFi. I want to go over some expectations for this upcoming week, what might cause volatility in the stock price, and go over everything else that you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up, and with that, let's get right to it. Starting off with macro data. On Monday, we have a lot of manufacturing. Current forecast for that is 48.8, and previous was 48.7. Anything above 50 shows more of an expansion. Anything below 50 shows more of a contraction. So that's going to be something to really pay attention to. You see Powell at 7 o'clock on Monday, although based on this, it looks like there is a blackout period, so Powell will not be addressing any economic outlook or monetary policy. So you can kind of take a breath of fresh air because of that. So yeah, something to keep in mind. Aside from that, though, you do have a couple of Fed speakers throughout the week, so that could cause some volatility. Wednesday, we have mortgage applications and market index. Last data was pretty on point, so the market's going to be looking for a lot of good continued momentum for that. ADP employment change, so that is going to be coming out at 7:15, so that's going to be before the bell. And then aside from that, on Thursday, we have challenge job cuts, initial jobless claims, and Friday, PCE and Michigan consumer sentiment. So it's going to be a wild ride, a lot of key data, and as a byproduct of all this data, we will most likely either be at 100% or it'll break down, especially December the 10th. Like, that's coming right around the corner, so it is fair to assume by the end of this week, we are going to be pricing in a 25 basis point cut, or realistically feeling it's going to be a 50-50 likelihood. So potentially it could go down. It's all going to come down to the data. One thing that did come out over this past weekend because of Black Friday that might kind of pop this likelihood is this. So even though technically this is actually phenomenal data, the market, as per usual, doesn't want good data. It wants somewhat negative labor data. So this one right here does show US Black Friday sales hit record high, and it looks like just online sales were 11.8 billion, up 9.1% from the year prior. So in general, like I said, this is good, shows consumers were out there spending the money and whatever else, but the market wants most likely negative data. So it'll be interesting to see how the market is going to kind of take this. Aside from that, though, looking at, for instance, Bitcoin as a good kind of indication of people's appetite for risk, it seems to be holding up. So it is fair to assume that a lot of the good positive momentum from last week is going to roll over into this week. So that, again, in among itself could be a pretty good catalyst. A couple of things specific to SoFi. So one is going to be on December the 3rd. So they have that fireside chat. So this was announced on November the 26th. Chris is going to be speaking, and historically, SoFi always closes green on these days. So again, that is something, again, just to kind of make a mental note of. The only other thing that potentially could be coming this week that you've seen other stocks, I think more notably Robinhood, you always get some FOMO leading into the end of the week. So maybe Thursday as well as Friday, it might just start to tick higher abnormally. And one is just the inclusion in the S&P 500. Technically, SoFi does qualify based on all the key metrics. It's just whether they get added or not. So that announcement will come, I think it's close to market close on Friday. You have SoFi Insider saying that it's going to go up 79%. That is definitely very, very far-fetched. I think best case scenario, maybe it might be like a 15% increase. That's, again, if it does get included. But most likely you will see a uptick, and then regrettably, as what we've seen with Robinhood, whenever it didn't get added, it sells off. So don't be surprised if we see some crazy volatility on Friday. Aside from that, that's pretty much it that's planned for this week. Aside from cryptocurrency, so that's going to be the big unveil, as what we've already kind of been aware of. But going into this upcoming week, looking at shorts, 10.04% of the free float's being shorted. Works out to be 118.89 million shares overall being shorted. So shorts have been getting a little bit more active. Nothing significant, something to worry about in my opinion, but if it does hypothetically get past, I'd say that 10.5%, at least in the next couple of weeks, then it goes to show that shorts are starting to double down in the broader market again. So I feel like shorts and SoFi, they've kind of just avoided each other lately, because you see a lot of other speculative growth stocks. Shorts have been really like starting to get in significantly. SoFi seems to be just very abnormal. And for instance, even on Friday, you had just a lot of big institutional transactions. So yeah, something to take note of. So there was a 40.6 million, 7.1. I've already done a video about this on Friday, so it's not new information exactly, but from a bull standpoint, you see a consensus for it to be roughly around that $30 to $31 range by the end of Friday. I would have anticipated a little bit more optimism, possibly, but nonetheless, bears are anticipating for it to be kind of sub 26. So for whatever reason, they are anticipating for SoFi to break down. So I'm not really sure exactly where that would be coming from. Possibly they're assuming some of this data that's going to be coming out is going to be negative. But aside from that, with it closing exactly at 29.72, that does mean that the 29.50 and below strike prices are in the money. So you have 12,000 at that 29, 21,000 at the 29, or sorry, I think I said 12,000 and 29.50. Sorry if I said that wrong, but whatever. 15,000 at the 28.50, and then 14,000 at the 28, and so forth and so forth. So again, you might see a little bit of a bump up come, let's say, Monday, as a lot of market makers will have to cover some of these transactions. And looking at the dark pool, you did see some. So if I sort this based on the time from Friday, you didn't really see any crazy ones after hours. These ones right here, so 2 o'clock onwards for the most part, but still not enough to cover all of those shares. So you might see a little bit of a bump up come Monday. But aside from that, with it closing at 29.72, it is currently trading between this R1 and the pivot. So 29.03 is going to be that key support point that you really want to watch for that to hold. And then 31.98 followed by 33.80 is going to be the next strong target / resistance points. Aside from all of that fun stuff on the actual chart, SoFi had a very epic V-shape recovery, so it was able to fight back, get above the 100, and also 50-day moving average in pretty much the same week. So crazy stuff. SoFi had a amazing, solid recovery, but one thing to watch for is going to be that 50-day moving average. That's kind of a big deal for a lot of growth stocks. So that is sitting at 28.19. And based on just the willing buyers, though, I don't really see that really breaking unless something really crazy does come out prompting a market sell-off, but I don't think anything is anticipated in my opinion. There really hasn't been that much articles coming out or any analyst ratings. The last one did come out on the 25th. So this week is going to be largely linked to data as well as technicals. So just kind of refer back to a lot of the kind of points that I did mention as far as fib and looking at the 50-day moving average. That's one's going to be kind of the big deal for this week. But if it does, for whatever reason, get included in the S&P 500, anticipate SoFi to hit a new all-time high, and so that would be pretty epic if you kind of think about it. One thing to bring up though is stochastic RSI neutral in nature, but if it does get to, let's say, the 31 or 31.50 as what the options is kind of pointing to, then it would be considered relatively overbought. Nothing really wrong with that, but that does mean that a first sign of weakness, whether it be specific to SoFi or the broader market, you could see a push lower. So I think overall this upcoming week, there's a lot of good reasons to be bullish, not just on SoFi, but the broader market. But as what we've seen in the past, everything could just change with one tweet. So let me know your general thoughts on SoFi. Do you think it's going to be a bullish week, bearish week? What's your overall thoughts? Hopefully everyone had an amazing weekend. One final thing, if you are looking for some solid buy signals on stocks, options, crypto, put out daily day trades, numerous swing trades, worthwhile to pop over there and check that out. Link in the description below and also the comments to my Patreon. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching.